Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview exclusive on YouTube for the football season. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward. We're going to help you break down the betting card for UFC 307 going down in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah on Saturday. The main event, Alex Pereira, about a minus 450 favorite against Khalil Rountree Jr., plus 375. Expect this one maybe to get a little bit higher as people continue to include Pereira in parlays and whatnot. And that's basically the price target I'm waiting for, but Billy and I are both leaning to the underdog in this fight, Rountree. I think in a striker versus striker matchup, it is hard to cover minus 450, minus 500 for a favorite unless you get the knockout. And Pereira's knockout prop is juiced into the minus 200s. And I think at this point, if you followed MMA, if you have any amount of contrarian in your brain, you could probably recognize that Alex Pereira is likely overvalued in the betting markets at this point. He's become extremely popular, maybe the most popular star in the UFC since Conor McGregor. And as a result, everybody's betting his knockout prop. Everybody is betting on his money line. I would expect him to get continued to tied into parlays, the College Football Saturday and the like. So I do expect this line for Rountree to eventually float up, maybe just a little bit higher and cross that plus 400 mark. But I projected this at plus 350. I would be happy betting him at plus 375 where he is currently at Caesars. The other approach I'd take on this fight is the overs. I'm leaning to the over 1.5 rounds at minus 130, the over 2.5 at plus 170, and the fight to go to a decision at plus 600. I think at elevation, we see reduced knockouts, reduced power from fighters. And then as these fights extend a little bit, they don't really have the ability to knock one another out. You see more submissions later in the fight at elevation, more late finishes from fighters tiring out as opposed to just getting knocked out. I think everybody's power is somewhat decreased when we've seen these fights up at elevation in Salt Lake City, in Mexico City, and the like. In terms of size, the physicality, Khalil is 3 inches shorter, 3-inch reach disadvantage, but he is also 3 inches younger, and I think he's quicker. He may also be the more durable of these two as well. His only knockout losses, he got ground and pounded by Ion Cutelaba. He got knocked out with a very flush elbow by Johnny Walker. I watched that one back last night. That was just a baseball bat straight to the temple from close range. I mean, just one of the most brutal elbow finishes I've seen in the UFC. Just went straight out cold. But, you know, Pereira keeps getting wobbled by punches from opponents. So I don't necessarily think he has a durability advantage. And the one thing that I think is really going to help Khalil in this fight is he checks kicks and he's also willing to kick with the kicker. The guys who have had the most success or the most competitive fights with Alex check kicks and then also kick him back. Israel Adesanya, Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz fought Pereira at elevation in Salt Lake City. That was a very sloppy fight. Alex didn't really look great in that fight. He looked very labored. He didn't get tired, didn't gas out, but he didn't look great either. It's probably like the slowest he's looked. It looked like he was kind of, crawling underwater. In terms of cardio, I'd probably have to favor Alex just because he's gone 5 rounds in the past. Khalil's never gone 5 rounds before. If I was to look at their styles and judge who has better cardio, I think I might go with Khalil. I just don't know if it's going to hold up over 25 minutes. But Khalil's southpaw stance, I think gives Alex, some different things to look at. His ability to check kicks makes the fight a little bit more competitive, and just having 2 kickboxers going at it, I think there's a chance it just gets into that moderate tempo kickboxing match that we sometimes see, those outside kickboxing matches where neither guy gets knocked out. So give me the overs and give me the underdog Khalil Rountree. I also like either guy by decision, plus 1050 for Alex, 19-1 for Rountree. Those are some fun long shot pokes on this fight. Billy, I know you like Rountree. I'm curious what you think in regard to the totals, what you think in regard to either fighter to win by decision, and any other thoughts you might have on this fight from a prop perspective, from a live betting perspective. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't think about the overs until I saw you put them in our show sheet, and I was like, that actually makes a ton of sense for all the reasons you pointed out, mainly the elevation. But the other one is sometimes we get these 2 powerful guys and we just get that, a little bit of too much respect where they both know that one mistake is the end of the fight for them. So maybe they both played a little bit more cautious. Maybe Pereira beats up his leg with calf kicks, but you're not going to finish a fight in the first couple of rounds doing that. If you get a finish, it's much later. So love those. I would probably take I don't know, I'll probably sprinkle on the go to decision at plus 600 because that's fun. And then take
Yeah,
a
I
little
might
bit more
ladder
on.
them. I might get progressively smaller, like over 1.5 risk half a unit, over 2.5 risk a quarter unit, and then the GTD risk a tenth of a unit. Just kind of ladder them up smaller.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great read. The only thing I guess a couple things that you didn't quite get to. The schedule for Pereira worries me here. This is his fourth title fight in 11 months,
Mm-hmm.
and he hasn't had a ton of damage in those fights. But you got to think about the training camps that means, all the stuff he's putting himself through. He had, I think, a broken toe coming into the last one. Like that stuff kind of adds up, especially into your late 30s, where he's going to look great until one day he just kind of doesn't, and that schedule catches up to him. I don't know that that's going to be this time, but at close to 4-1 odds on Rountree, it makes sense. And then he's got more than a 25% chance of just landing that one big shot. Rountree is probably the first, well, maybe not, but one of a few opponents who has just as much power as Pereira in terms of can knock you out with one shot. You know, Izzy's a little bit more of a volume striker. Even Yuri doesn't really crush guys with one shot. He needs to land more. Rountree can do it with one strike. So does he have a better than 1 in 4 shot of landing that? I think he does. I like making plus 400 as a target. I haven't bet it myself yet either. I think that's probably the sharp way. If it finishes at plus 375, plus 380, something like that, I'll still be betting it. But yeah, that's a good number to look for, just given the fact that he could find that one in a way that most of Pereira's last opponents haven't had that.
Yeah, and he's also, I think, just more defensively sound than Jamal Hill. More defensively
Mhm.
sound. I'm much more defensively sound than Yuri. I'm more defensively sound than Yuri.
Yeah.
Both of these guys, though, defend strikes at about 50%, which surprised me. I thought Khalil's striking defense would be a little bit higher. And I do want to mention the striking efficiency. I've talked about this in the past, but a fighter's combined striking accuracy and defensive percentages, the average is around 100. Those typically add up to 100. Pereira's at 114, Rountree is at 89. So the striking accuracy between the two is drastic. Alex landing strikes at 63%, Khalil at just 39%. I would imagine a lot of that is the leg kicks from Alex, not as much the head kicks.
To jump in on that,
Yeah, go
the
ahead.
leg kicks, when you check a leg kick, they count that as a landed strike in
They
the
do.
stats. So when you point, like you just said earlier, hey, checks leg kicks really well and his efficiency numbers aren't great. It's like, well, because they're not counting those as defended, which is stupid, but that's how it is. It's a hard sport to analyze statistically for a lot of reasons, but that's just one that people should be aware of if they're looking at that striking accuracy and defense stats.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think they're skewed a little bit. I wouldn't put the difference between them at 25% in terms of like actual combined striking accuracy and defense. I think Pereira is the better offensive striker, but I think Khalil may actually be better defensively. He's just going to be quicker, going to be the better mover between the two, but he is smaller. And I don't think he has power quite at Alex's level. I would still give Alex the power advantage,
Yeah.
but as you said, he is one of the guys I trust to actually be able to land damage on Alex if he hits him flush. Whereas with, other fighters he's faced, I think it had to be more cumulative. Even though Izzy knocked him out cold, I always considered Izzy more of a cumulative attritional striker. Izzy put him out cold, nearly knocked him out another time as well. Let's move on to the co-main event, title fight between Raquel Pennington, who at best available odds now is minus 150 at BetMGM, against Julianna Peña, who is plus 140. Peña coming back from a long layoff. She last fought and lost her title to Amanda Nunes in July of 2022. Peña won the belt in January of this year against Mayra Bueno Silva. Of the two, Pennington, the much more efficient striker. Again, going back to that combined accuracy and defense, Pennington at 112, Peña at 97. And I don't think there's as much leg kick equity you could factor in to those lines. Also, Pennington is the much better takedown defense. I think either one of these ladies may attempt a takedown, but Pennington is the likelier to land them, in my opinion. Peña has permitted 20 of 26 takedown attempts against her. I think she's happy to play off her back. She has a really good submission game, but in the same respect, she may get stuck on her back and lose minutes in this fight that way. So I think Pennington just being more active, having the better efficiency numbers, the strike differential per minute, plus 0.5 to plus 0.4. So it's basically even in terms of significant strike differential per minute, but Pennington's overall efficiency is higher. And I think she's likelier to have cage control time with the cage push, or potentially top time Peña as well by landing takedowns. So I projected this line at minus 204 for Pennington. I would bet her up to minus 185. I also like her decision line. I made that minus 115. You can get plus 110. I would bet that down to about even money. Just my concern is she doesn't win by wide margin. She's doing a lot of things that are going to create close rounds on judging. But I do think, the layoff for Peña and Pennington being more active is actually going to prove significant, especially over the first 10 minutes of the fight. Billy, we're aligned on this fight. We're aligned on most of the fights on this card. And as we'll get to a little bit later, there might be a Pennington family parlay in the works. But tell me why you like Rocky against Julianna Peña.
Yeah, I almost think you're overthinking this one. If we look at Julianna Peña's resume, if we write off the first Nunes win as a fluke, which by all accounts it seemed to be based on the rematch, her only wins in the last like 6 years are against 40-something-year-old Sarah McMahon and Nico Montano, who finished her pro career with a 4-3 record and is somehow was a UFC champion, which is a fun trivia fact that no one remembers. And she hasn't fought in over 2 years. She's really into the promotional side of things and the talking her way into fights.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be that focused on like the training and being a good fighter part of fighting, which is always a concern for me. Whereas Rocky is just, nose to the grindstone. I believe every person who has beat Pennington held a UFC title at some point and more or less fought those people close. Took Amanda Nunes to a 5th round. Decision loss to Jermaine de Randami when Randami was closer to her prime. Decision loss to Holly Holm when Holm was close-ish to her prime. She loses to the best of the best, and she beats everyone else. I don't think Julianna Peña is the best of the best at this point in her career. I think she probably could be if she wanted to be a full-time fighter and not a part-time promoter, but that's not where we're at right now. So I'll take Rocky. I said in my luck ratings, waiting as long as I can because we seem to be getting better and better prices throughout the week. But yeah, just wait until the best number pops up, and I'm taking that.
Yeah, Kat Zingano fought for a UFC title. Leslie Smith, I don't believe ever did, but basically, 5 over 6 losses, 5 over 7 losses. We're all fighters who challenged for or won a UFC title at one point. Also lost to Jessica.
I should say in the UFC. Her losses in the UFC.
Yeah, but even like, I mean, it's her career history. Like even as I said, going back to Invicta against Kat Zingano. Kat Zingano challenged for a UFC title ultimately and was their 5th professional fight. So yeah, I think Pennington, I mean, she also arrived in Colorado early. I think that's another factor in this fight. Julianna Peña was getting called out by Pennington for not coming to Utah early and acclimating to the elevation. So I think that's another factor in her favor. Peña has been very, very active, in terms of media appearances over the past 3-4 years since she won that Nunes fight, just before the Nunes fight. She says a lot of stuff that gives me concerns about her brain health long-term. I don't know how engaged she is in terms of training, but also like mentally, how well focused she is in this fight. I think the elevation factor is a significant concern. Let's move on to our fight of the night. Jose Aldo about plus 124 against Mario Bautista at minus 138 best available odds. This fight is juiced at minus 260 to go to a decision. And I think this is a very similar matchup to Jose Aldo's last fight against Jonathan Martinez in terms of the level of opponent he's facing. Martinez a better kicker than Bautista. I think Martinez a better fighter than Bautista overall. I'm curious if you agree or disagree with that. The angle that concerns me is the youth. Bautista is 7 years younger. And also Bautista has better cardio, and these two are fighting in Salt Lake City. Now, Aldo has fought in Salt Lake City in the past. That's where he lost to Merab Dvalishvili when we thought he was originally retiring, but he came back. He looked great in that fight in Rio. And I am not overly impressed by Mario Bautista either, both in terms of his ability to win minutes early in this fight when Aldo is fresh, but also his chin. He got knocked out by Trevin Jones. He got knocked down by Ricky Simon. I don't think he looked particularly great in either the Simon or the Damon Blackshear fights. And the guys he fought before that were all cans who were set up to get him knockouts. He was a minus 400, minus 500 favorite in all of those fights. Even the Jones fight, I believe he was a pretty big favorite too. So my concerns, as I said, the age for Aldo also, which is the same thing that happened in the Martinez fight. You guys know how I handicap fights. I'm looking mostly to bet against public perception. 70 to 80% of selections this week are on Jose Aldo. So he is very much the public underdog this week. But after making my adjustments, I still made him about plus 107. So I would take plus 120 or better, plus 115 or better on Aldo. I think if you want, there's going to be a hedge spot live after round 1. On top of that, though, I also like his knockout odds at plus 700. I don't think Bautista has a good chin. And I think Bautista is going to eat punches here from Aldo. Maybe he wins minutes. Maybe he wins minutes down the stretch, takes over on cardio, takes over on speed and athleticism. But I think Aldo is going to have chances to hit him hard and close the show. So Aldo plus 124 on the money line. Aldo by KO at plus 700. And then if you want a live entry on Bautista, I think the best price comes live after round 1. Billy, I know you're on Aldo as well. Curious what you think about his knockout prop and then the potential live bet or live entry on Bautista.
I'm not as worried about Aldo's cardio as you for a couple reasons. One, Merab makes everyone look like they have bad cardio.
Sure.
Like looking tired against Merab doesn't really mean much. And that was a 5-round fight, I believe. Or was
He
that?
also
No, that
didn't
was
really
only
get
3.
taken down. He mostly just got cage pushed. Like Bautista's
Yeah,
not taking him down. So
yeah, and that hit the nail on the head. Like if this was a pure kickboxing match, I think Aldo would be minus 200, minus 300. Like if they just put on big gloves, right? And nobody takes Jose Aldo down. If you can defend Merab Dvalishvili takedowns, you're not going to get taken down by Mario Bautista. So how
91%
does
career
Bautista?
going back to his WEC days. Not, I mean, it's across like 20 fights. There's a substantial data point on Aldo's takedown defense.
Yeah, and it's not against guys who can't wrestle either,
Yeah.
right? Like he's not getting the Alex Pereira treatment where they keep putting him against strikers. Like he's fought some of the best grapplers in the world who largely haven't been able to take him down. So I just don't see the path here for Bautista covering a favorite price. Look, I kind of get the live angle. I get the logic there. I
Mhm.
think Jose will be fine over 3 rounds though. Like if we're understanding that that's Merab Dvalishvili, that's a different animal. Everyone short of that, all those cardios looked decent or like reasonable. And he fought so many 5-round fights in his career that 3 rounds, even at elevation, isn't a big ask, I don't think. So, yeah, I don't know how I feel about the knockout. I don't know what Aldo's power is like at this point in his career. It seems to be waning a little bit. But more importantly, I'm just happy to get plus 125 on him, so I'm not worried too much about trying to get greedy.
Yeah, just jumping onto the cardio angle as well. He's going to hit the body. I feel like he'll land more body work than Bautista does too. So that could even up the cardio to a degree. Yeah, but Bautista I don't think he's as good of a fighter as Jonathan Martinez. I think Martinez with the leg kicks and the outside, like I think Martinez was a more difficult style for Aldo to manage as well because of the kicks. Aldo doesn't really kick at any point, at this point in his career anymore. Takedown defense, 88 of 97. It defended 88 of 97 takedown attempts in his career. That is remarkable. He's
Is
faced
that in his
1 point.
career or was that against Merab? That was just against Merab, right?
Right, just against Merab in that one fight. I know about a third of that volume was against Merab. No, he's faced nearly 2 takedowns per 5 minutes of distance. So it's not like guys don't try to take Jose Aldo down. He just has some of the best anti-grappling in the history of the sport. Maybe the best anti-grappler in the history of the sport, pound for pound.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. I love that fight he had in Brazil. I believe we were both on him in that fight against Martinez. It was a joy to watch. We're not going to get the same atmosphere that we did there with King of Burrito fighting in Brazil, but I do think stylistically, or, in terms of like level of opponent, this is not a more difficult match. I think this is the easier matchup for him of the two between Bautista and Martinez. Let's move on to our favorite underdogs. Like mine, don't love mine this week. I'm going with Court McGee at plus 165. I think you may get a better live number after round 1 on McGee. This is likely a retirement fight for him, so I'm not going to be investing too heavily. He is from Utah. That's why they're giving them this fight here in Salt Lake City. But he's the same age as Tim Means, his opponent. It's not like he's fighting some young up-and-comer. Means is taller, he's longer, 3-inch reach advantage. And I think he's the better striker, but McGee has the better cardio. And again, he's from Utah. He is accustomed to not fighting at elevation, but training at elevation. So I would expect him to have more success in rounds 2 and rounds 3 as Means is potentially slowing. Would bet his money line live after round 1, but I'm interested in his round 2 and round 3 props, plus 1,600 and plus 2,200 respectively for Court McGee. I know he's old. I know he hasn't looked as good in his recent fights as he did earlier in his career, but Means does tend to really slow down and sometimes give up in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, especially when he's getting grappled. So maybe small pokes on Court McGee round 2 and round 3, small pre-fight on his money line at plus 165. Best number likely comes live after round 1. Billy, you're going to the match between Kevin Holland and Roman Dolidze. I think I'd be on the other side of this fight from you if I were to bet it, but it'll likely be a pass for me. You're taking a shot on the dog, Roman Dolidze.
Real quick before I talk about him, I also like Court McGee. I gave him out as a top propper. I have that on our sheet, the plus 3.5. Here's the way I see this one. If you are betting Court McGee's money line, you're betting on him to land 2 takedowns because he's going to win any round or he gets a takedown. He's not
Pretty
letting
much.
Tim Means up. Great grappler, great top game. And if you're betting his plus 3.5, which is minus 135, you need one takedown from Court McGee. It's
Fair.
literally just how many takedowns do you think he gets? Tim Means, Court McGee has a kind of a questionable chin at this point, but Tim Means isn't like a one-shot power guy. He's like just going to touch you up a bazillion times over a fight.
100
And he can't
jabs,
do
yeah.
that when he's on his back. So it's kind of just, how many takedowns do you think Court McGee gets? Bet it that way. I do like Roman Dolidze, though, here against Kevin Holland, stepping in on a little bit of short notice, but not really. A lot of it is the fact that Kevin Holland's primary goal is not to win the fight, it's to win fight of the night. Like, that is step one for Kevin Holland, and we work from there. Now, it's not horrible this time because his path to victory is probably his path to getting the best fight of the night, which is keeping it standing and trading blows. But Dolidze has gotten a lot better, I think, in the striking in recent fights. Anthony Smith is kind of washed, but he went up a weight class to fight Anthony Smith. Did okay there in the striking, like did what he needed to do. I was impressed by that. And he's one of those guys who, because his submission game is so strong, he can really open up on the feet, comes out lefty a lot of times and just fires head kicks. Because try to take me down, right? Like, I'm going to beat you once we get to the ground. And then Kevin Holland is basically a welterweight fighting up at middleweight.
Yeah.
He's gone back and forth, but size and strength wise, if it does get to the ground, that size and strength is a much bigger factor on the ground than it is standing. I think this one will go to the ground at some point. It's weird. Like, people are viewing this as a striker versus grappler. I think both guys are underrated in the opposite discipline. I really
I agree.
have a lot of love for Kevin Holland's grappling, but against a guy that much bigger and stronger who looks to do so much damage on the ground, which is what I really appreciate about Dolidze, he's not giving up top position for submissions. He's using submissions to set up positions where he can beat you up. It's like the opposite of club and sub, the inverse of that. I think that'll be really effective against Holland, who, got hurt in his last fight, but then threw up an armbar from his back. He doesn't have that path to catch Dolidze in a submission if he's off his back. Dolidze's not going to give you that. The guy went to ADCCs, it's just a different level of grappling. So like Dolidze at the price, also like his inside the distance at plus 550, which will lead us into you giving me your favorite props.
Yeah, just to finish off on that fight, I think Holland is going to be much faster, but Dolidze should be much stronger. Dolidze coming off of that light heavyweight fight against Anthony Smith, spent the large part of his early career at light heavyweight. Holland has spent most of his career at welterweight. So I think there will be a big strength disparity between these two, but Holland is a 5-inch reach advantage, and I think he's the much faster striker. So I think Dolidze doesn't need grappling success in order to win this fight, but he does crack. And Holland has been knocked down in 2 of his past 3 fights, 2 of his past 4 fights. So that chin, while he's pretty durable, he does keep getting cracked, and I think at some point he may get KO'd. He had that one, the head clash leading to the KO sequence, I believe, as well. It's just like damage that's going to add up over the course of a career. So definitely worth considering. Roman Dolidze is an underdog this week.
I'd take either guy at plus money in that fight, to be fair. Like, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm like confident Dolidze is going to win. I would take either guy at plus money, but I think plus 130. I would make this basically a pick 'em on either guy. So to get plus 130 on Dolidze, I'm pretty happy with.
And you also like the ITD at plus 550 as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a sprinkle. I think he's got a better shot. He can crack. He's got good submissions. He likes to do ground and pound. And both guys might get tired. We're here in Salt Lake City, high elevation. Sometimes that leads to higher finish rates. Doesn't always. Sometimes we get so tired we can't finish each other. But if one guy gets tired first, it can be a big difference.
Leads to more submissions. Both have submission skills. So
Yeah.
could definitely see a submission getting locked in. Cardio-oriented submission. A few props for me. Two fights I'm looking at from a prop perspective in particular. First is Kayla Harrison against Ketlen Vieira. I like this fight to end inside the distance at minus 104. Harrison is a minus 1,000 favorite here. Her ITD line, the best available odds are plus 120. The average odds are about plus 110. I'm not betting Harrison inside the distance at plus 110 when I can get the fight to end inside the distance at minus 105. Obviously, take the fight ITD prop when there's that small of a discrepancy. I projected this fight to end inside the distance about 60% of the time, a little bit more. Minus 160 was my projected line. I would bet that up to minus 145. Vieira has good takedown defense, 92% throughout her career, but when she does get taken down, she gets stuck on bottom. If she does stuff takedowns here from Kayla Harrison, I think she's live for a KO, particularly later in the fight, because Harrison's style is very exhausting, not only for her opponents, but for herself too. If she's not able to get those takedowns, I think she will eventually tire out. Now, apparently she's made a private bet with Alex Pereira. I'm not sure what the actual content of the bet is, but I think people have surmised that it's for Pereira to get a submission and for Harrison to get a KO this weekend. Her most likely finish prop, her most juiced finish prop is her KO prop. I think most people expect a ground and pound TKO, and that is the result I expect as well. But getting, again, just to reiterate, minus 105 on the fight to end inside the distance compared to plus 110 on Harrison to win inside the distance, you're getting all of her equity to finish, but you're also getting Vieira's equity as well and not paying more than 10 or 15 cents difference between those two wagers. I also like Ovince St. Preux to win in round 2 at plus 1,400 or round 3 at plus 2,200. And I like him live after round 1. His opponent, Ryan Spann, typically has about 5 minutes of cardio before he wanes dramatically in terms of effectiveness. OSP is the older guy. He's 41. I believe Spann is 33, but he has the better gas tank. He has a much calmer style. And if he survives round 1, I expect him to flip the momentum in this fight around. So OSP live after round 1, and then his round 2 prop at 14-1, his round 3 prop at 22-1. Those are my favorite props for Saturday. Billy, any thoughts on Vieira Harrison or OSP versus Ryan Spann?
I'm really wish I would have been the one who caught that fight ends inside the distance price relative to Harrison's finish line.
It was the same way in her UFC debut as well. There was such
Yeah.
a small differential between the two. I ended up betting the fight to end inside the distance. So yeah, it was like the same thing in both around the same pricing as well. I think it might have been like minus 120, but it was pretty much around evens.
I almost got it in the debut because Holly Holmes' like upside there was just to hold her against the fence for 15 minutes, which doesn't really lead to finishes. But if it's either Harrison beats her up on the ground or Vieira beats her up on the feet, I think pretty high clip of the time. So love that one. Yeah, OSP makes total sense, but that's just a live spot for me. We don't need to get pre-fight exposure, and we could get close to those prices if Ryan Spann fights like Ryan Spann normally does. So yeah, I like both of those. Don't need the pre-fight exposure because I'll be watching live. If you are not, don't want to, tie up your Saturday, that makes a ton of sense. And then for our best bets, we are both on the same thing, the Pennington family parlay with Tisha. I'm a little bit annoyed that she's not Tisha Tiny Tornado Torres anymore because it was a beautiful alliteration, but here we are fighting Carla Esparza, who has like every signal you could imagine working against her. She said she's going to retire after this fight.
Yep.
This is her first fight back after having a baby. And Tisha Pennington has lost both of her last 2 fights by split decision. Both probably should have been wins for her. It's minus 170. I don't like making a minus 170 my best bet, but like we could not be getting any more bright flashing lights pointing towards Tisha Pennington. I don't think we really need to break down the styles at this point. Please don't watch Carla Esparza fights back. They are not a good time. So yeah, I don't know if you have anything different than that or kind of the same signals you're seeing.
Yeah, definitely don't rewatch her fight against Rose Namajunas where they just circle the cage with one another for 25 minutes. And then all of us with plus 260 Esparza tickets were like, I don't know. I guess so. I mean, she certainly looked at value because nobody did anything. But scoring that fight was impossible. And frankly, considering Rose's popularity, I'm surprised that Esparza got it. Yeah, as you mentioned, retirement fight for Esparza. She last fought in November 2022, where she got finished by Zhang Weili. She lands takedowns against everybody. I would expect her to land a takedown in round 1. And as a result, I think Torres live after round 1, maybe we get a better number if she loses the opening round. But Torres is pretty good at escaping, getting out from bottom, and she's the two of the two. She's going to land many more strikes in this fight. The career significant strike differential per minute, plus 2.4 to minus 0.7. So a huge advantage for Torres, about 3 strikes per minute, significant strikes per minute differential. Esparza, as I said, she lands takedowns on everyone. She averages 5 takedowns per minute, per 5 minutes of distance. So she's averaging a takedown per minute at distance. But I don't think her control game is that good. And I don't think she's going to be able to control Tisha for extended periods in this fight. And she doesn't land any damage. And under modern MMA scoring, how does Esparza win rounds? Like she doesn't land any damage against her opponent. She's just controlling. So yeah, I think this favors Torres pretty heavily. I say Torres, Tisha Pennington pretty heavily, the former Tisha Torres. I agree. We need to figure out a new nickname for her because the Tisha Tiny Tornado Pennington does not hit as hard as Tisha Tiny Tornado Torres. So yeah, I don't know how we fix the alliteration on that, but yes, I'm with you on Torres. I made her, I think minus 200 and happy to bet her at minus 175. But again, you may get a better live price after round one. And if you want to just pull up the parlay odds for the Pennington family parlay, if you're going to take Raquel, we'll say minus 165 for Raquel, minus 175 for Tisha, that parlay would pay you out at about plus 152. So if you want to parlay the two of them together, family parlay, I'm not opposed to it. I'm going to be betting both individually. Billy, before we get out of here, I just want your quick final thoughts on one of the other fights we didn't get to that will be very popular this week on Joaquin Buckley against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Wonderboy now in his early 40s. Buckley apparently training with Craig Jones for this camp, and definitely training grappling heading into this fight. I don't necessarily think he's going to strike it out like many people would normally expect. So any thoughts on Joaquin Buckley against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson? You think Buckley can get the sub?
Yeah, I bet Buckley early in the week, a little bit inside of minus 200. I got that one in my luck ratings. I don't think I would take it now that it's on the other side of $2, but I do like just the physicality and the athletic edge at this point against 41-year-old Stephen Thompson. I think it's pretty significant because even on the feet, Thompson can touch him, but Buckley can hurt him. And then if Buckley chooses and is able to grapple, he's not a great like technical grappler. He's just so ridiculously strong and explosive now that he's down at welterweight. He can just run through you and take you down. I don't see him having a problem doing that against Stephen Thompson. And then one other one I mentioned in my luck ratings, also line moved with me, which I wouldn't take now, is Yasmin Lucindo versus Marina Rodriguez. I think it's like a 15-year age gap in that one. If I might be wrong, but it's extensive. I've been very impressed by Lucindo, her output, which I think gives her a better shot at keeping that up or keeping up any output at elevation. Marina needs to grapple. It's hard to grapple. Like grappling takes more energy than striking. Don't love that for her at elevation, especially as she gets up there in years. So again, wouldn't take that now. Be sure to check out the luck ratings, which come out on Monday, because we got about 30, 35 cents of CLV, depending on when you hit that one.
Yeah, Billy's luck ratings always crush in terms of CLV. I don't bet until later in the week. Typically, as I get into the winter away from baseball, maybe I will start firing earlier in the week on some of these fights. It is a 15-year age gap between these two. I didn't realize it was that drastic. Marina, born in 1987, Lucinda, born in 2002. So my goodness, I don't know if I've seen an age gap that big in a UFC fight. It is Lucinda or pass for me. I think the line has probably moved to where it is more correct, but she has the much better athleticism in this fight, all the grappling upside in this fight. I think Rodriguez, if she can keep it standing, strike for 15 minutes, she'll absolutely be live as an underdog. But I don't think she'll be able to keep it out of the grappling realm. I think Lucindo going to be too athletic and fast for her. And that'll do it for our UFC betting preview on the Action Network's YouTube channel. You can find more UFC betting content from Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app where you can find all of our content as well. If you haven't already subscribed to Action Pro, you can access our projections and receive quicker bet notifications from all of our Action from all of our Action experts. Use promo code POD20 to get $20 off an annual subscription. Best of luck with all of your bets this weekend. Thank you for tuning in and listening. For Billy Ward, I'm Sean Zerillo. Best of luck with your bets. We'll see you next time.